The MovR application's architecture can seem a little complicated at first. So let's take a few minutes to walk through it to provide some context for the course lessons and labs. In this lesson, we'll take a high-level look at how MovR works. Then we'll dig into the back end in a little more detail. Then we'll highlight the specific aspects of the application that you'll be learning about in the course. At a high level, MovR consists of two components: a front end written in JavaScript that provides the UI the user interacts with in their browser, and a back end written in Java that interacts with the database. The front end communicates with the back end using a REST API. This course is only concerned with the back end, so that's where we'll be spending our time. If you're familiar with using the Java Persistence API in an application created with Spring Boot, you probably have a pretty good idea how the MovR backend works. If not, the easiest way to understand the process is to walk through an example. Let's say the user visits the page to look at a vehicle's details. The front end will use the REST API to request the vehicle's info by its ID. The API call is handled by an object called a controller. Based on the specific request, the controller will pass control to the service layer. The service layer implements the so-called CRUD operations, the basic functions to interact with the table data: create, read, update, and delete. In this example, the control passes the ID of the vehicle to the vehicle service component. The vehicle service interacts with CockroachDB by way of a repository component, which is configured to connect to your cluster. In this example, it connects to the MovR database. Services handle objects called entities, which represent the actual data within a database table row. So here, each vehicle entity has properties for the vehicle ID, vehicle type, current battery charge, and so on. Remember that the goal in this example is to retrieve the details of a specific vehicle. So the vehicle service performs a database read operation, which copies the requested data from the vehicles table into a vehicle entity object. The vehicle service passes that object back to the controller, which wraps the data in a DTO, a data transfer object. The DTO allows the controller to serialize the data into a string containing a JSON record and pass that back to the front end, which will deserialize and display the vehicle details to the web application user. The MovR application follows a common Spring Boot pattern. Teaching all of Spring Boot is outside the scope of this course, so we'll be focusing in on the aspects of MovR that are key to understanding how applications work with CockroachDB. We'll dig into how entity objects model different types of data and table relationships in the database. We'll also work with service methods that perform database transactions. And of course, we'll be working with the repository and tables and data in the database that underlie the whole MovR application. Let's review. The MovR application consists of two main parts: a front end that provides the web UI for the user, and a back end that connects with the database. The back end is implemented with Spring Boot to receive REST API requests from the front end, perform requested database operations such as reading and saving data, and if applicable, to return information requested by the front end. The lessons and labs in this course will focus on the elements of the back end that are most important with creating an application built on CockroachDB.